I found out about it completely by accident. My husband, Robert, had left his laptop open on the dining table, which was unusual. I was just trying to clear the table for dinner when a notification caught my eye. It was from ChatGPT, and it was smack in the middle of a conversation. Curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced at the screen. What I read made my stomach drop. How do I tell my wife she's let herself go without hurting her feelings? His words, blunt and heartless, felt like a punch to the gut. My cheeks flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. There was more. Lines and lines of conversation where he asked for advice on how to handle my supposed lack of self-care. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Robert, the man who'd vowed to love me through thick and thin, had turned to a chatbot to discuss my looks. It felt surreal, like some twisted joke. I stood there, frozen, as the reality of it settled in. My mind raced, trying to piece together why he'd do this instead of just talking to me. Didn't he realize how much it would hurt? The rest of the day went by in a blur. I cooked dinner mechanically, my mind replaying the words over and over. Robert came home, his usual cheerful self, oblivious to the storm brewing in my head. I watched him closely, searching for any sign of remorse or guilt, but he seemed perfectly at ease. I wondered if he even remembered the conversation he'd had with the chatbot. At dinner I could barely meet his eyes. Every word he said seemed hollow. "How was your day?" he asked casually, and I almost laughed. How could I tell him the truth? That I'd spent most of it questioning the very foundation of our marriage? After dinner, as he settled on the couch, I knew I couldn't just let it slide. Something inside me snapped. What would you have done? I walked over, my heart pounding in my chest, and sat down beside him. "Robert, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked surprised but not worried. "Okay," he replied, setting his phone aside. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the confrontation. "I saw your conversation with ChatGPT," I said, watching his face closely. His expression shifted from confusion to realization, and finally to something that looked like panic. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said quietly, avoiding my gaze. "Why, Robert?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice calm. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" He hesitated, and I could see the gears turning in his head as he searched for an explanation. "I didn't want to hurt you," he finally said. I thought getting advice would help me find the right words. It was a weak excuse, and we both knew it. I looked at him, trying to see the man I married, but all I saw was someone who couldn't even be honest with me about something so personal. The trust we'd built over the years felt like it was crumbling, and I couldn't ignore the sting of betrayal. What was I supposed to do now? I had to make a decision, one that would dictate the future of our marriage. And as I sat there, grappling with the weight of it all, I realized that whatever choice I made, things would never be the same. Summer 2025 was supposed to be different. I had promised myself that this year I would take control, make real changes. But standing in my kitchen, I felt trapped. The kids were playing in the backyard, and their laughter drifted through the open window. It was a reminder of what was at stake. Their happiness, their sense of family. I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was slipping away from me. My husband, Mark, had been distant for months. Work, he said. Always work. I wanted to believe him, but a nagging doubt kept me awake at night. It wasn't just the late nights and missed dinners. It was the way he avoided eye contact, the way he brushed off any real conversation. There was a time when we talked about everything, even the mundane details of our day. Now silence filled those spaces. I glanced at my phone, half hoping, half dreading a message from him. Nothing. Just a bunch of old notifications and a group chat with some friends planning a weekend barbecue. I used to enjoy those gatherings, but lately I found excuses not to attend. The idea of pretending everything was fine felt exhausting. I tried to focus on the positive. I had a good job, 2 amazing kids, and a roof over our heads. But every time I thought about the future, a knot formed in my stomach. How much longer could I keep pretending? Was it worth holding on for the kids? Or was I teaching them that this was normal, that this was enough? Despite everything, I still hoped things might change. I remembered the early days with Mark when we were inseparable. We'd stay up late talking about our dreams, our plans. But somewhere along the line, life happened. Bills, responsibilities, and the daily grind took over. It was like watching someone you love slowly fade away. I felt a pang of guilt. Was I being selfish, wanting more? Mark never raised his voice, never gave me a reason to leave. But sometimes the absence of conflict is its own kind of problem. It was as though our marriage was a car on autopilot, moving forward but with no direction, no destination. My sister Emily had been through a divorce a couple of years back. I remembered her telling me how freeing it was, but also how hard it had been on her kids. "You have to be ready for that kind of upheaval," she had said. "It's not just about you anymore." A noise from the backyard brought me back to the present. My son Jake was calling for me, his voice full of excitement. I smiled, pushing aside my worries, and went to see what he wanted. His eyes lit up when he saw me, and for a moment everything felt right. But as I watched him play, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the edge of something big. A decision, a change. I knew I couldn't continue like this forever. The question was, what would I do about it? Would I find the courage to face the truth, whatever that truth might be? Later, I found myself sitting at my desk in the home office, staring at my laptop screen. My wife's words still echoed in my head. I needed to know if what I suspected was real, or just a figment of my imagination. I opened the folder labeled A2, the one I had stumbled upon accidentally while organizing files. Scrolling through the documents, my heart raced. I found a chat log that caught my attention. It was filled with messages from unfamiliar names, conversations that felt too personal, too intimate. As I read through them, a knot formed in my stomach. My wife, the person I trusted the most, had been sharing more than just words with someone else. Then my eyes landed on something that made my blood run cold. There was a photo of her. A photo I had taken during our last vacation. She was laughing, her eyes sparkling, the moment so private and personal. Yet here it was, uploaded and shared with strangers. The humiliation hit me hard, like a punch I never saw coming. How could she betray me like this? I thought we had a strong bond, a life we had built together. But now it felt like a lie. Every message, every image was a reminder of how little I truly knew what was happening. I sat back, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Trust, something I had taken for granted, was now shattered. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I never imagined. All the late nights, the whispers I dismissed, they all pointed to this moment. I needed air, space to think. Staying in the house felt suffocating, the walls closing in on me. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, and headed outside. The cool breeze hit my face as I stepped into the backyard. Jake was still playing, unaware of the turmoil inside me. His innocence was a stark contrast to the chaos I felt. Watching him, I realized I had a choice to make. This wasn't just about me. It was about my son and the family we were supposed to be. But trust was a fragile thing, and rebuilding it seemed impossible right now. I needed time to process, to figure out what this meant for us moving forward. The photo, the chats, they were just pieces of a larger puzzle I had to solve. As I stood there, the noise of the neighborhood fading into the background, I knew my life had changed forever. I couldn't ignore it any longer. What would you have done? I glanced back at the house, knowing I couldn't just leave things hanging. My phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me back to reality. It was a message from my brother. "Hey, need to talk about Dad's birthday plans. Call when you can." Family obligations were the last thing I wanted to think about right now, but maybe it was a distraction I needed. I decided to call him anyway. As the phone rang, I tried to push the betrayal out of my mind. "Hey," I said when he picked up. My voice sounded distant, even to me. "Hey, you okay? You sound off," my brother asked. "Yeah, just tired." "What's up with the birthday plans?" I asked, trying to sound normal. "Well, Mom's thinking about a surprise party. You know how she gets with these things," he chuckled. I forced a laugh, attempting to match his light-hearted tone. "Sounds good. Let me know what you need me to do," I replied. My mind wasn't really on the conversation, but I didn't want to raise any suspicions. "Sure thing. But seriously, you okay? You don't sound like yourself," he pressed. I hesitated, unsure if I should unload on him. "Just got a lot on my mind," I finally said. "I'll be fine." After we hung up, the weight of the situation came crashing back. I couldn't ignore the evidence I had seen. I had to confront her, but the thought of that conversation filled me with dread. As I paced the yard, I noticed a neighbor waving from across the fence. "Nice day, isn't it?" she called out. Her cheerful voice was both comforting and irritating. "Yeah, it's great," I replied, managing a smile. I didn't want to seem rude, but I couldn't engage right now. There were too many thoughts spinning in my head. Returning inside, I found myself back at the desk, staring at the screen. The folder was still open, the damning evidence right there. I needed to talk to her, get some answers. But every time I thought about it, my resolve wavered. Finally, I heard the front door open. My wife's voice carried through the house as she called out, "I'm home." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. This was it. I couldn't avoid it any longer. I walked to the living room where she was kicking off her shoes. "Hey, can we talk for a minute?" I asked. My voice was steadier than I felt. "Sure, what's up?" she replied, looking at me with a smile that now seemed so foreign. I gestured for her to sit. As she did, I tried to find the right words. "I was going through some files today." I began slowly. Her expression shifted, a hint of something crossing her face. "Oh, really? Find anything interesting?" she asked, her tone casual, but there was an edge to it. "Yeah, actually," I said, meeting her eyes. "I found some chats and photos that surprised me." There it was, the flicker of panic. She tried to cover it quickly, but I caught it. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I mean, I saw the messages, the photo from our vacation," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I need to know what's going on." She looked away, taking a deep breath. "It's not what you think," she started, but her voice faltered. I waited, giving her the chance to explain. The silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. I realized that everything hinged on her next words. Would she come clean? Or would this be the moment everything fell apart? Daniel sat on the couch, his eyes darting from the TV to the floor. I stood in front of him, arms crossed, holding my phone. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded but didn't look up. "I found something today," I continued, trying to sound calm. "Something about you." Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the couch cushion. "What is it?" he asked, but his voice was barely a whisper. "I came across some messages," I said, glancing at my phone. "Messages that don't make sense." He shifted uncomfortably, his breathing quickening. "I don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, eyes fixed on the floor. I took a deep breath. "There are patterns, Daniel. Posts that match things you've said, things we've done." I paused, hoping he'd offer something, anything. His face paled and he swallowed hard. "It's not what you think," he said, echoing her earlier words. "Then what is it?" I pressed. "Because right now it looks like a lie." Daniel's hand reached for his phone beside him, but it was shaking too much to hold it steady. He stopped, chest heaving, and his eyes went wide. He was on the verge of a panic attack. I took a step back, not sure what to do. "Daniel, breathe," I urged, trying to keep my own voice steady. "Just breathe." He nodded but couldn't seem to catch his breath. I watched as his fingers dug into the couch, his knuckles turning white. "Look, I just want to understand what's happening," I said, softer now. "Can you explain it?" His breaths were coming in short, sharp gasps. I grabbed my phone again and opened the folder where I had saved the screenshots. "These," I said, holding the phone up. "These are the posts. They match so much of what we've talked about." He glanced at the screen, his eyes flickering with recognition, then back to the floor. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he finally admitted, voice barely audible. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling a mix of relief and confusion. Daniel's shoulders slumped. "It started as a joke. I didn't think anyone would notice," he said, his voice breaking. "But then it just kept going." I shook my head, trying to process his words. "You need help, Daniel," I said. "This isn't healthy." He nodded, still struggling to breathe normally. "I know," he whispered. I felt a pang of sadness, but I knew what I had to do. "I can't stay here right now," I said, standing up straighter. "I'm taking the kids to my parents' place." His eyes widened and he looked up at me for the first time. "Please," he said, desperation in his voice. "I need time to think," I replied. "And so do you." He nodded, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I turned away, my heart heavy, and went to pack a bag. As I walked down the hallway, I couldn't help but wonder if this was it. If there was any way back from here. What would you have done? The drive to my parents' house felt like it took forever, even though it was only 30 minutes. The kids were unusually quiet in the back seat, sensing the tension. I tried to focus on the road, but my mind was racing with thoughts of what had just happened. When I finally pulled into the driveway, my mom was already waiting on the porch. As soon as I walked in, she took one look at my face and didn't need to ask any questions. "Let's get you settled," she said, taking the kids inside. I was grateful for her understanding and followed her into the familiar warmth of my childhood home. After the kids were occupied with their toys, we sat at the kitchen table. "You know, sometimes taking a break is the best thing you can do," my mom said, pouring me a cup of tea. Her words were meant to be comforting, but I could tell she had more to say. "I don't know, Mom," I admitted. "It just feels like everything's falling apart." She nodded, her face serious. "That's why you need to think about what's best for you and the kids in the long run," she said. "Have you considered that maybe it's time to separate for good?" The suggestion hit me like a punch. I sipped my tea slowly, trying to process her words. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that," I confessed. "Sometimes you have to make the hard choices," she replied. "But you need to do what's right for you." Her voice was firm and I knew she meant business. "Okay, so what do you suggest?" I asked, feeling more unsure than ever. That's when she pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. "I've drafted a few points," she said, sliding it across the table. "It's just an idea, but it might help you decide." I picked up the paper and scanned the 3 points she had written down: trial, separation, counseling, and evaluating the relationship in 6 months. It was straightforward, but seeing it laid out like that made it feel more real, more possible. "Think it over," she urged. "You don't have to decide anything right now, but he deserves to know where you stand." Her eyes met mine, and I could see the concern mixed with resolve. After a moment I nodded. "I'll text him," I said, reaching for my phone. I hesitated for a second, thinking about how he would react, but then typed out a message outlining the conditions. As I hit send, a sense of finality washed over me. It felt like a step forward, a way out of the limbo we'd been stuck in. I glanced at my mom, who gave me a reassuring nod. Even though I had no idea what his response would be, I knew I'd taken a step in the right direction. But still, the uncertainty lingered. What did this mean for us? Would he agree, or would this push him further away? The questions hung in the air, unanswered. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before he picked up. His voice tense but composed. "Got your message," he said. "You really want me to do this?" I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "Yes, it's not just about deleting. It's about getting help too." I heard him sigh, the kind that carried the weight of reluctance and resistance. "This is a lot, you know," he said. "I mean, deleting everything is like erasing a part of my past." "Maybe," I replied, "but it's a part that's hurting us. You need to make a choice. Are we worth it?" The line went silent for a moment, the kind of pause that makes you question if the call was dropped. But I waited, hoping he was just thinking rather than avoiding. Finally he spoke, his voice softer, almost vulnerable. "I don't want to lose you. I'll do it. I'll delete it all. And I'll talk to HR about some time off. I need help." Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the fragility of trust. "Okay, but you have to follow through. This isn't just about making promises." I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, trying to balance between hope and skepticism. "Yeah, I get it," he said. "I'll start today. I'll send you screenshots if you want. Proof that I'm doing it." His offer surprised me, a small gesture that hinted at sincerity. "That would help," I said, letting a sliver of hope back in. "And let me know when you've talked to HR. We need a timeline." "All right," he agreed, sounding more resolved. "I'll handle it. But will you give me a chance?" His question lingered, like a fragile thread connecting us across the distance. "I want to, but it'll take time," I admitted. "Let's see how things go this week. One step at a time." Even as I said it, I wondered if I was being too lenient or too demanding. It felt like a tightrope I was all too familiar with. "Fair enough," he said, the tension in his voice easing a bit. "I'll keep you posted. We'll make it work, right?" "I hope so," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just remember, this is about more than just us. It's about you too." As we ended the call, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. We had a plan, a timeline, but the road ahead still seemed uncertain. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend overnight, and I knew we were only at the beginning of what would be a long journey. I glanced at my phone, wondering what he'd do next. Would he really go through with it? Or was this just another promise destined to be broken? Only time would tell, and time, it seemed, was the only thing we had plenty of. Walking into the clinic felt like stepping into a different world. The sterile halls and muted tones had an odd way of amplifying my anxiety. I clutched the A4 sheet of paper, the details of our proposed house rules neatly typed out. It was supposed to be a blueprint for moving forward, but it felt more like a fragile truce. The therapist, an older woman with kind eyes, greeted me with a nod. "How are you feeling today?" she asked. "Honestly, I'm terrified," I admitted. "I keep thinking about what could go wrong. What if there's a relapse? And what if those images?" I trailed off, unable to finish the thought. She leaned forward. "The fear is normal, but it's important to focus on the steps you're taking to prevent those things. The rules you've outlined are a good start." I handed her the A4 sheet. "Here, these are the rules we came up with. No uploads, full transparency." My voice wavered. "It sounds simple, but it's a big commitment," she finished for me. "And that's okay. The important thing is that you're taking this seriously." We spent the next half hour discussing the plan. The therapist suggested some adjustments, but overall, she thought it was solid. "What about the HR leave?" I asked. "He needs time to focus on this without work getting in the way." She nodded. "I've spoken with HR. They're on board with a leave of absence. You'll both have the time to work through this." The relief was palpable. It was one less thing to worry about, but the fear of relapse loomed large. "What if he can't stick to the rules?" I asked. "That's why you're here," she replied. "To put safeguards in place. The rules aren't just about restrictions. They're about creating a new environment of trust." I left the clinic feeling a bit more hopeful. The therapist's plan and HR's approval gave us the structure we needed. But the fear still gnawed at me. What if he slipped up? Could I really trust him again? As I walked to my car, I thought about the upcoming days. Every interaction would be a test. Every decision a potential pitfall. But I realized something. I wasn't alone in this. We had help, and for the first time it felt like we were truly in it together. The drive home was quiet. I replayed the therapist's words in my mind, trying to internalize the hope they carried. My phone buzzed with a message from him. A simple thank you. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. I parked in the driveway, clutching the A4 sheet like a lifeline. This was it. The beginning of a new chapter. And while the fear lingered, so did a flicker of hope. Would we make it through? Only time could tell, but for now at least we were trying. What would you have done in my shoes? 2 weeks later we met at the park. It was a place we used to frequent back when everything seemed easier. The sun was out, but it didn't match the storm inside my head. I still heard echoes of those hurtful comments in my mind, even though I tried to push them aside. As I walked down the path, I wondered if I was truly ready to move forward. He was already there, sitting on our usual bench. He stood up when he saw me, a hesitant smile on his face. "Hey," he said, a little too cheerfully, as if trying to mask the tension between us. I nodded back, not sure how to start this conversation. We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the laughter of kids in the distance. It was like the world was reminding us of the innocence we had lost somewhere along the way. Finally he spoke, breaking the uneasy quiet. "I've been thinking about what the therapist said," he began, glancing at me to gauge my reaction. I nodded again, this time more slowly. "Me too," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's not easy to forget everything that's happened." He took a deep breath, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the vulnerability he usually kept hidden. "I know I messed up. I've been trying to figure out how to make it right." His words were steady, but the look in his eyes told me he was genuinely struggling with this. I wanted to believe him, but doubt still clung to my thoughts. How do I know this isn't just another phase? That you won't just slip back into old habits? I asked, needing reassurance more than anything else. He reached into his pocket and took out a folded paper. It was a copy of the plan we had made with the therapist. "I've been sticking to this," he said, holding it out to me. "Every single day. I'm serious about this. About us." I looked at the paper, then back at him. It wasn't just about the plan. It was about the sincerity in his voice, the way he seemed genuinely committed to changing. Maybe this time was different. Maybe this time he really meant it. "Okay," I said slowly, still unsure but willing to give it a shot. But we need checkpoints. If things start slipping again, we have to address it immediately. He nodded, relief washing over his face. Agreed. I don't want to lose you. Not again. For the first time in a long while, I felt a tiny bit of the weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. And sometimes a start was all you needed to find your way back. Would you have taken that chance? I took the paper from him, feeling the weight of it in my hands. It wasn't just a list of tasks. It was a promise, a commitment he was making to both of us. As I unfolded it, I could see his neat handwriting marking each step, each goal, with dates and notes scribbled next to them. It was strange how something so simple could mean so much. He watched me read, his eyes searching my face for any sign of approval or doubt. I've been keeping a journal too, he added, almost as if he was offering extra proof of his dedication. Writing down my thoughts, what I've learned. It's helping me see things differently. I glanced at him, surprised. You? Journaling? I couldn't help but smile a little. He always used to scoff at the idea, calling it touchy-feely stuff. He chuckled a bit self-consciously. Yeah, I know. But it's not as bad as I thought. Actually, it's been kind of therapeutic. His admission cracked through some of my lingering skepticism. If he was willing to try something outside his comfort zone, maybe he was truly invested in changing. Still, I had to be sure. Can I read it? I asked, hoping to get a deeper glimpse into his mindset. He hesitated for a second, then nodded. I'll bring it next time. You can look at everything. I've got nothing to hide. I nodded, appreciating his openness. Our conversation was interrupted by a dog barking nearby, chasing a squirrel up a tree. It was a moment of levity that eased the tension hanging over us. We both laughed. A shared moment that felt like a small victory. It reminded me of when we used to come here to escape, find peace. Maybe it was possible to find that again. So, I said, bringing the focus back to us, what's the next step in this plan of ours? He leaned back, looking more relaxed. We meet weekly. Talk about what's working, what's not. I want your input too, so it's not just me trying to figure it all out. I thought about it. Having regular check-ins sounded like a good way to keep things on track, ensure we were both committed to the process. Okay, I'm in, I said, feeling a little more hopeful. His smile widened, genuine relief washing over him. Thank you. I mean it. I know it's gonna take time, but I'm ready for it. As we sat there, I realized this was the most honest conversation we'd had in months. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Let's make this work, I said, more to myself than to him. We stood up, ready to leave the park. As we walked side by side, I felt a cautious optimism building inside me. This wasn't an end. It was another beginning. Maybe this time we'd get it right. Was I about to make it worse? Epilogue. After everything that happened, we decided to stay married, but under clear rules. No more image uploads without my consent. We set up weekly therapy sessions, both individual and couples therapy. It was non-negotiable. We had to address the underlying issues that led us to this point. Another rule was shared phone boundaries. It wasn't about snooping, but about transparency. If he wanted to rebuild trust, he had to be open about everything. Lastly, we agreed on a 90-day review. If he slipped up during this period, I would leave. If he showed genuine change, we would start to rebuild slowly and cautiously. In therapy, we unpacked a lot. It wasn't just about the photos or the breach of privacy. It went deeper into patterns we had ignored for too long. I didn't realize how much I was pushing you away, he admitted one session, looking genuinely regretful. For the first time, I felt like he was really trying to understand my perspective. It was a small step, but it mattered. As the days went by, I noticed changes. He seemed more present, less glued to his phone. It was a relief, yet I remained wary. Trust doesn't come back overnight. A couple of weeks into our agreement, he asked, "Do you want to see my messages?" It wasn't about checking up on him. It was about the willingness to be open. I declined but appreciated the offer. It's funny how the offer itself felt like a step toward healing.